agriculture through to food, and as Wayne mentioned, that connection, I'll keep talking as you walk in and out, don't feel like you're being rude, that connection between our urban dwellers and rural industries is really important, and it's less now because of the way we live. And so it's really important that organisations, businesses like Fred's family business are actually supporting that connection. It's so important for our supply chain to understand better about what everyone's doing. So thank you, Fred. That was really inspirational. So, and I didn't mention before, after Harry will be our next speaker, and I'll introduce him in a minute, but during our talks, hopefully at the end of most of them, we'll have a few minutes for questions. And so wave your hands, as I said before, after the speaker finishes, obviously. And then James and I can bring the microphone around to you. Okay. Righto, so I'll do a bit of an introduction for Harry now. And I'd like to point something out. Actually, Helen Carell, Helen Lewis, are you still in the room? No, she's not. I guess the thing that's important in agriculture is all the connections. And Fred mentioned that. Helen Carell, Helen Lewis she is now, is a woman that's involved with the holistic resource management side of things, and she's doing some great work. She's at this conference. The connection is I was at university with Helen in the old days, and she's doing some great work. She is here, so if anyone is interested in holistic management, please track Helen down, or if you can't find her or you don't know what she looks like, come and find me and I'll take you and introduce you to her. So the connection is, another connection, the good thing in agriculture is we do tend to be very connected. I always say once you get over the Great Dividing Range, there's about 3 degrees. I think maybe it's actually only 2. We kind of all know each other pretty well. There's actually not that many of us over there. There's Sue's up there, Orgle. And we all generally are working together to that goal of sustainable agriculture, looking after our land better, learning more. You know, we've made mistakes in the past, but we're intent on not continuing that. So the next connection, I guess, and Harry, that I'm just about to introduce, we at Landcare. Yeah, the program's changed. So, yeah, Ben unfortunately couldn't be here. So, yeah, Harry from AWI is the next... Oh, sorry, I'll say that because some people might have come here to listen to Ben talk from Sarah's Tag. So our next speaker, and it only changed a couple of days ago, didn't it, Harry? So we're very lucky that Harry said he could come and do this, is Harrison Dunning from AWI, Australian Wool Innovation, and he'll be speaking about a 3-year project that we at Landcare have been involved in, on the ground, the discussions around that. It's an insetting pilot project. So it's actually a very innovative project within the wool industry. Okay, so I will jump straight into introducing that, and that way if it's not what you want to listen to, because it's different to the program, you can walk out, and Harry won't be offended. It's a bit different. The Sarah's Tag one was about cattle and rangelands grazing. Harry's one's more about the wool industry, but it's very interesting, the fact that it's around the whole insetting question. So Harry is the Sustainability Projects Coordinator for AWI, and he's going to be sharing insights about this 3-year industry-first pilot designed to keep emissions reductions within the wool value chain. So it's certainly very topical. Oh, yes, I've got to change the slide. Sorry, I've not really been following directions very well. I'll just do that quickly. Is that the right one?
Yeah, that'll be it. There you go.
Ah, cool. Thanks. Thanks, James. So the project that Harry's going to be talking about is laying the foundation for a national insetting market, connecting wool growers with global brands and manufacturers, and looking to meet their Scope 3 targets. So I won't say much more because Harry's going to speak to this, and apologies that the program changed, didn't get to you guys, but this will be a very interesting topic. AWI are doing some pretty interesting work around this. So thanks, Harry.
Yeah, sorry for the change of program. You have to look at my face for the next 15 minutes, but I'll give you a quick 15-minute spiel. We'll do some Q&A at the end. Looking around the room, there's a lot of people I see who really inspire me, who are just getting out there and doing really innovative stuff. So it's an absolute privilege to be here in front of you all. I'm going to be talking about the Woolmark Plus Australian Wool Insetting program. My name's Harrison Dunning. I'm the Sustainability Projects Coordinator at Australian Wool Innovation. And really my role there is one of a translator. One day out in the paddock with wool growers talking about production, the next talking with European fashion brands about their sustainability agendas and their commitments that they're making, and really trying to bring these two worlds together to make informed collaborations that support both financial and environmental resilience within wool growing environments. So the Woolmark Plus Australian Wool Insetting program is really a pioneering initiative that's looking to deliver transformational climate and nature benefits across the whole wool supply chain. In its simplistic form, we're looking to connect Australian wool growers with global apparel brands and wool manufacturers that are looking to meet their emissions targets. It's about removing barriers that exist within the system to date, such as a lack of upfront capital to deliver activities and the appropriate guidance and methodologies to jointly deliver on-farm emissions reductions and removals activities. We're looking to enable brands and wool growers to report the climate and nature outcomes that they're delivering, scale these emissions reductions and removals over time, and deliver what the market is looking for on their properties. So now just for a little bit of context as to why we've got out there and why we've initiated this pilot program. We're seeing climate change sneak into our daily lives, sometimes quietly and often quite loudly. But only really since the 2015 Paris Accord do we see the rubber hitting the road and some actual action starting to happen. We see legislation being pushed down from governments down onto industry, and we now see 145 countries globally representing 90% of the global emissions pool with net zero targets. Secondly, we see companies seeing the commercial imperative here. They have to build resilience into their supply chains if they're going to future-proof their businesses going forward. And thirdly, we have conscious consumers that are really driving changes with their purchasing decisions, as well as demanding higher expectations in relation to ethical and environmental products. So why do we start this program? Critical wool markets across the world are really engaged in this agenda in limiting the impacts and effects of climate change. In Europe, we see the EU Green Deal, which is a massive piece of legislation that's pushing trillions of euros into sustainable investments over the next decade. Over in Japan, we know mandatory reporting has now been in place for 2 years relating to climate, and we also see that in our major wool market in China, with mandatory reporting coming in next year for environmental and social governance, as well as them operating the largest emissions trading scheme in the world. And finally, a little closer to home, we also have mandatory reporting coming in this year. We've got an operating ACCU market that, in a global perspective, is actually operating in quite good shape. And we also have the nature repair market, which you've heard a lot about today, that's coming to effect as of this year. So what does this really mean from the perspectives of wool buying brands and textile companies in the world? They're really coming under a lot of pressure to reduce and remove emissions within their supply chains. We talk about scope 1, 2, 3s. What does this actually mean for a wool buying brand? Scope 1, those are your direct emissions under your control. Say you've got a diesel boiler in your factory, the burning of that diesel contributes to your scope 1 emissions. Scope 2, any electricity that you're buying in to run processes. Keep your lights on in your retail stores, run your warehouses, run your processing plants. And then the really big major one in that red circle there is your scope 3 emissions. That's everything else that's within your supply chain. For a wool buying brand, that's really material, as 95% of their emissions come from their scope 3s. And we look at a wool heavy brand and where they come from, the majority of that is on-farm emissions. So brands are faced with a really material challenge in looking how are they going to address these scope 3s and what are the mechanisms that are going to enable this. So what has limited any progress to date within this space is really, we have brands and the supply chain making bold 2030 commitments, but the implementation plans to get there is really patchy. There's limited visibility on the cost of what this transition is going to cost and who's going to shoulder the burden across the supply chain. And a real mismatch between the needs of finance and the instruments that are available in the marketplace to deliver this. Especially in a fashion and a fashion brand context, sometimes there's very limited transparency from producer all the way through to final finished product. And the relationships that are required to enact system change just don't exist yet. We also see a very dynamic regulatory environment. There's a lot changing out there in the market, and a lot of energy is going towards compliance rather than developing strategies to actually enable change. I've just presented an absolute mountain of challenges to you, and it might be a little bit overwhelming, but within these challenges lie significant opportunities for Australian wool growers. Wool growers have influence over around 60 million hectares of land within Australia across really diverse landscapes, and they have something that the market really needs. That's the access to land and activities that can actually reduce and remove emissions. So what is the opportunity here? One, attract investment into emissions reductions and removals on-farm to support climate and nature outcomes on wool growing properties. Secondly, developing a robust framework for monitoring, reporting and verifying these outcomes that go back to growers as well as the brands who can support these initiatives. And thirdly, diversifying income streams. This presents another revenue opportunity for wool growers while keeping the environmental benefits that they're generating within their own value chain, as well as developing your environmental resilience, as well as your financial resilience. So what is the Woolmark plus Australian Wool Insetting program? All those opportunities, all those challenges I outlined, this is the mechanism that we're hoping to pilot and develop over the next 3 years to deliver on these. It's a 3-year pilot program that's looking to develop and test an insetting framework for the Australian wool industry, with the aim of really retaining emissions reductions and removals within the wool value chain. The program intends to create new opportunities for wool growing businesses to build resilience, access capital to invest in environmental activities on farm, and deliver tangible benefits for the whole wool value chain. This initiative has secured really strong support from the government, and we've been given $4 million to really kickstart this program, build the underlying framework and get it running. We've been doing significant stakeholder engagement since we began last year, and we're really excited to say we've got over 10 global wool buying brands that have put their hands up to say, we want to invest with our wool growers to deliver environmental activities on farm. On the flip side, we've been out and put up an open expression, and we had overwhelming participation with up to 40 wool growers putting their hands up to say, we want to collaborate with these brands to deliver the outcomes that they're seeking. So I'm sure you'd all be aware of what offsetting is, generating credits on your farm and then selling them. Usually that goes to your big emitters that have minimal chance to abate these, such as mining and airlines. But herein lies a challenge, is that when you chase an offsetting pathway, the footprint of your actual wool production does not go down, as the right to those credits are sold outside of your value chain. The challenge is where this happens is the needs of wool buying brands to reduce their emissions is not met. This creates an issue in the future as brands need to reduce the footprint for the wool they're buying in order to meet their targets. This is why the program is really focused on insetting. Simplistically put, insetting is about fashion and textile brands helping to reduce the emissions footprint of their raw ingredients they source by helping fund emissions reduction and removals activities on farm. Brands know that there are these barriers and challenges to reduction, whether it's access to the right technical advice, whether it's the data they need, or whether it's the capital to actually enable this change. But they know they have a responsibility and a role to play to enable this action to occur. By helping to finance practices on farm that reduce their footprint, this will ensure them that they meet their targets and secure a long-term pathway to credible emissions reductions and removal. So Really what we're trying to do here is develop a scalable commercial structure to enable brands to direct funds to Australian wool growers to deliver climate and nature outcomes. We've done a significant work to date on this front in building out the methodologies and monitoring, verification, reporting guidance, as well as the accounting guidance and the financial vehicle that will allow this capital to flow. We as the program facilitator, AWI, have brought together all the actors from wool growers through to the brands and, the project sponsor, and the project facilitator, Pollination, is responsible for running this framework and building it into a commercial scheme after the 3-year pilot is complete. We've also been working with highly technical experts in this area, and this is where Landcare comes into the picture, who have been critical to supporting the program. They've provided significant technical advice and guidance on the environmental plantings element, as well as going forward, they will be the preferred implementation provider when we're looking to get trees in ground come next year. So just a little bit about what this actually looks like on farm for wool growers. There's a long list of eligible activities, and it's really a game of matchmaking because this is a market-led initiative and we will have capital coming in, and it's up to the brands to decide what they would like to fund, but really it's saying here are all the amazing things that growers are already doing or potentially can do, and marrying up that capital to enable it to happen. We're looking at things like best practice flock management and animal husbandry, improving joining, nutrition, lambing and weaning rates, as well as how we can optimise farm inputs to overall reduce that footprint of the individual farms within the program. We're also looking at activities that increase soil organic carbon, best practice natural resource management. So think about your rotational grazing, anything that increases ground cover and vegetation biomass across pastures, as well as looking at potential soil remediations that could boost that soil organic carbon potential. And this is where Landcare comes into the picture in providing the advisory on environmental plantings and what this could actually look like integrated into a productive farm business, whether it's shelter belts, block plantings, along your riparian zones, or looking at biodiversity corridors and erosion repair. So a lot of work has been done to date in bringing people along the journey and really informing our stakeholders, that is our brands and our wool growers, about what this pilot program intends to build and where it's heading to make sure they're comfortable with participating. At the moment, we're in contracting phase with all the brands who have all shown significant interest, and we have the agreements on the table now looking to finalise the amount of capital that will determine what activities we actually can deliver through this program. In the background, we've been developing all the guidance and finalising the methodologies in the accounting practices that allow the claims to flow through the system and reach their intended audience, which is the brands. And looking forward, we'll be doing full feasibility analysis on all the participating wool growers as to, of those eligible activities that I discussed before, what this actually looks like in practice and how we can ensure it's integrated into a productive farm business. Looking forward, we'll have a baseline, and then from that, year on year, we'll go out with our monitoring, reporting and verification team and really put forward a climate and nature impact report that's delivered yearly to the brands that says this is what has been achieved through those emissions reductions and removals activities, as well as the co-benefits for nature as well. Looking beyond this, we really want to scale the program into something that's commercial, and that'll involve engaging new companies to continue that flow of capital, as well as expanding the scope of available activities to wool growers within the program, as well as onboarding new properties to engage. So just to bring everything together here, wool growers and landholders more broadly have something that the market really wants and really needs. Global apparel brands and wool manufacturers recognise their responsibility to support their supply chain in achieving their climate and nature targets that they've been setting. This program really is market-led, and it's looking to build and pilot a scalable commercial structure to enable insetting within the Australian wool industry. By removing barriers and creating new opportunities, it really facilitates joint delivery of on-farm emissions reductions and removals with transparent reporting and claims of climate and nature outcomes. This is probably significant for everyone in the room, as this is looking to lay a foundation that can be transferred across all commodities, unlocking greater economic and environmental opportunities for landholders. I'd just like to pause there and open the floor to any questions you might have. I'll be around today and tomorrow if you don't get to ask your question. I'm more than happy. I love talking about this stuff, so please come up and say hi.
Well done, Harry. That was fantastic. I'll just say, if people have got questions about the environmental plantings element of the program, I've been working with Harry on this program for over 12 months, and we're doing the environmental plantings as part of this. But if you've got questions on the overall program, obviously Harry will answer those. So I'll go with you.
Yes, James has been very helpful to date.
G'day, thanks for that talk. So I just came from the Accounting for Nature talk. Is that what you're using, the econ score, in your accounting for natural changes? And the brands, are they involved through because they're legislated they have to reduce targets, or is it just a commercial nice thing? Because,
Yeah, absolutely. So probably easy to start with your second question. A lot of these brands have set voluntary targets. While they're not legislated, they have shown significant interest that they do want to meet these targets, and they see the value in insetting and actually supporting the people that are growing the fibres, because without a thriving wool industry, your heavy wool buying brands who love the fibre, that's no longer tenable for the future. So they see now's the time to act and invest, even if it's not legislated and voluntary. And they also see that it's coming, that it might be legislated. So they want to show credible action to their boards and all their stakeholders. In terms of how we're monitoring and reporting and verifying the outcomes on farm, we'll be using the guidance on the Australian sheep and beef calculator for the emissions side of things. But for the nature side, this is still a little bit in flux, as there isn't something that's established and market leading. Accounting for Nature is a great example of where they're charging ahead with that. At AWI, we've been developing a nature positive farming specification over the past 5 years with the team at Farming for the Future and La Trobe University. So we're currently investigating how we can actually integrate this into the program. Quick top level, that's 10 metrics that can be measured and monitored remotely to deliver the report and verify nature outcomes over time. So that's an approach we're still looking into, but something we're very keen on.
I'll go to Tallulah over here.
I'm just interested to hear a bit more about what incentive structures you might be looking at. So I understand you've got the 10 brands that essentially have put in a pot of money. But for the wool industry, what kind of incentive structures are there, or what are you looking at within this that might be different?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, the main barriers that's enabling change that we see is that lack of upfront capital to actually invest in these activities. And this is where there's the main incentive for insetting. If you're looking and going out and doing, say, an EP project, all your expenditure comes really, majority in those first few years, doing all the prep work, getting the trees in the ground and making sure they make it through to later survival stage. So the incentive there for the wool growers is you can do something on your property that you might be looking at doing anyway, and actually getting the capital up front to do this with no cost burden on yourself. And from the brand perspective, at the end of it, they get the outcomes that they can report against their sustainability reporting year on year, showing they actually are moving forward and have credible action that they can take up to their board and say, we're investing in our supply chain to reach these targets that we've set.
Thanks. Trust the banker to ask a question around the numbers. So I just touching on that a little bit more, obviously with a lot of landholders, there's always that question, do I inset or do I offset? In the context of environmental plantings, where if you were to offset, currently you can earn about $55 per ACCU. Is there a pathway where in theory they could do both, where they could potentially sell some ACCUs and then inset for those that are required within the supply chain? And then is the supply chain actually going to pay a premium for that superfine wool that's got all these other attributes?
Yeah, so within the program, we're obviously looking at all available ACCU methodologies that are out there. And that sort of acts as an insurance policy for the growers, because this is only a 3-year project that we're looking to extend to 5 years. But really, some of the permanence periods for these projects are 25 to 100 years. So by registering the projects and generating ACCUs, the landholder is the proponent within an insetting scenario. So they'll have these ACCUs, and after the period that we have contracted with the brands, which is 3 to 5 years, they'll have optionality as to what they do with these credits. So whether you want to go out and continue this relationship that you've built with the brand and continue retiring those through an insetting pathway, fantastic. Or if they can get a better premium for them through an offsetting pathway and you need the capital now, then that's also an option. So it's really about providing options to landholders about what they're doing with their land and with the ACCUs or credits that are generated from this. And one of the key benefits to insetting is that it opens up a few more doors, should I say, than just the methodologies that are within the ACCU market, because it's up to the brands what they're comfortable for. So we can look at things like smaller scale plantings that maybe wouldn't qualify under the EP method, or other things like this that present really great opportunities to enable good change, but don't fall under that ACCU market methodology structure.
We might wrap it up there, Harry, if that's all right. But I know there's a lot of, and thank you for that question, Tim. I mean, all good questions. But how long, are you here tomorrow as well, Harry, or just today?
Here today and tomorrow, so
Cool.
Please come say good day.
Yeah, please track Harry down and ask any questions. It's a really innovative project they're working on. So thank you. I'm sorry, we just have to keep moving along. As Harry said, it's a very interesting project, and as Harry said, in agriculture we seem to be increasingly under the spotlight, but that's all right. Increasing expectations, increasing opportunities with the likes of the project that Harry's working with. So thank you. Look, it's swap over time, so please feel free to walk and change as I'm speaking. I won't think that you're rude. I just wonder if anyone in the room, I always think of this when Harry talks, has ever heard the expression whenever we were slow getting to the car when I was growing up on a merino wool property, Dad would say, "Come on kids, rattle your dags." Does anyone even know what that means? You do. That's good to know. I won't explain it because it will sound weird from the front of the room, but if you don't know what rattle your dags means, ask Bruce or maybe Harry. I don't even know if Harry would know what that means. He does. There you go. No. Okay. Righto. So, look, thanks so much, Harry. That was great. And please track Harry down if you've got questions. He's only too happy to answer them. So I'll just start introducing our next speaker. I've got to change the slide over. I'm a slow learner. Righto. Thank you. Now, our next speaker I'm very happy to be actually working quite closely with Ant over the next 3 years, and I hope that you can all see the irony of an IPM specialist being named Ant. That's pretty cool, really. Now, Ant has a project which is part of the Landcare Ag program for the next 3 years. We have a program of work called Biodiversity in Action. So as part of that project for the next 3 years, we'll be working with 11 projects across Australia, from as far north as Normanton and